Hey guys, welcome back to my channel. So I still have a lot of work left to do on the Z50JS Monkey and the 74 CT70 bike. I haven't rode either of them yet, but they're both really close, and I'm at that stage where once I get that first ride in, it's going to be all the final touches to get those bikes great. But I'm always keeping an eye out for my next project, and I found a really good deal on a few CT70 bikes that I figured I'd go ahead and pick up to have some projects lined up, and I really do enjoy bringing these little bikes back to life. So what we have today is a 1970 CT70, a 71, and 72. So the 70 obviously is a complete bike, and it's actually in pretty good shape aside from the fact that it's got paint and some surface rust. So I thought in this video I'd show you not just the details of what this particular bike has. I don't really have any plans yet other than the fact that two of these bikes are the KO model. So 69, 70, and 71 are the original KO version, and those also seem to be the most desirable right now, and just in general, since those were the original CT70 bikes. So for both of these KOs, I'm going to keep largely original. For one of them, actually, I think I may try to do a very high quality restore. On the 69 bike, I did a very good quality restore. On one of these, I'm thinking about taking my time and doing an excellent quality restore, just because these frames are getting harder to find, and right now the market seems to be going up quite a bit, and again, particularly for the KO version. But in addition to showing you what I've purchased here, I thought I'd also go over some of the things that you need to be mindful of when you're looking at buying one of these frames. There's a lot of different places you can buy them. I find a lot of mine off of Craigslist and Facebook Marketplace. eBay sells quite a bit of them, although those prices are always at a premium. And if you can't actually be there to look at the frame, there's a lot of things that you could miss that could be pretty problematic down the line. So let me show you what I have on this bike and these frames, and then also point out some of the things that you should be looking for when you're in the market to buy one of these. So this is a November 1970 CT70, and it's actually in really good condition. The surface rust and paint makes it look in pretty poor condition, but from a buyer's perspective, that's always better because it's easier to negotiate. Although recognizing that there aren't many dents and none of the rust looks too bad, I'm going to be stripping off all of the paint anyway, so everything's in really good condition. When I'm looking for bikes like this, the most important thing is the frame. Dents can be banged out, but rust or big damage to the frame is often more trouble than it's worth. So this particular bike, it has the frame, the engine, the front forks are important. A lot of these other parts are easy to find. So handlebars, CHP makes a great reproduction handlebar. The rims actually, since they're steel in most cases, I've been able to restore them, and I have a couple of videos on the process of that. Even if there's some slight bends in it, it's pretty easy to bang them out and get them in good condition before refinishing them and having them look really good. Obviously, these tires are toast, and it can be pretty challenging sometimes to get these tires off because the wire bead inside the tire often effectively welds itself to the rim as it rusts over the years. But these rims actually look in pretty good shape. The fenders are probably trash. I have a whole bunch of fenders that don't have any bends in it, but once the chrome's gone, having it re-chromed is more expensive than just buying brand new OEM fenders from Honda, which they still sell. It has the top triple tree, which for the KO models is all one piece. And this looks to be in pretty good shape and just needs to be polished up. But this is a difficult part to find, or at least expensive to find otherwise. The fork legs look in okay shape. Again, a couple of companies make reproduction ones that work really well and look fantastic. The hubs almost always can be restored. These are aluminum, and as long as it's not missing any big chunks of the metal, they can be polished up or painted or done in a number of different ways to make them look really good. But this has all of the elements to the front hub. And then back here, the rear hub has all of the assembly elements as well. This bike has an exhaust, although it looks like it was re-welded here midway through the header, so probably not something I'm going to retain. The heat shield here is actually in good shape, but it's the wrong one. The KO model had the all silver kind of slitted all the way across heat shield. This is from a K1 and onward exhaust, although it's actually the one that I would need if I was going to do a more authentic rebuild of the 1974 bike. So who knows, in the end I may actually end up pulling this off, cleaning it up, and putting it on that bike. This also comes with a plastic tank, which is pretty difficult to find, especially in good shape. It has the battery box, which is very difficult to find. It looks like it has some bends that need to get banged out, but otherwise in good condition. It comes with the original kickstand assembly, which seems to be in relatively good shape. The kickstand itself is pretty bent, but if I'm not able to bend this back into shape, you can still find the kickstands themselves. But the foot peg assembly is becoming increasingly difficult to find, and when you can, it's pretty expensive. The engine case looks to be in good shape. It was painted black at one point. So if I end up doing a full restore on this bike, I'll probably actually split these cases and completely clean the engine out. The head also isn't an original head on this one. This is a Chinese head, which isn't quite the right size for it. I'm sure it'll run, but again, in a full restoration, I'm probably going to make sure that everything is correct. So let me show you these other two frames and then point out the things that you should be looking for when you're purchasing one of these old CT70 bikes. So this is the 1971 frame, also in excellent condition. One of the first things that I'm looking for is how straight the frame is, and that's pretty self-explanatory. Just make sure you're checking it from different angles and make sure that there aren't any major bends or other imperfections in the shape of the overall frame. And then the main thing I'm looking from there is the rust. So there's three areas that tend to rust that are the most problematic. One is right here underneath the fuel tank. I've seen a lot of bikes that this area gets completely rusted out really quickly. This particular one is in great shape, but pay attention to this because even if it is covered at the moment, you need to poke around a little bit and make sure that it's not so thin that it starts to flake off and break through. The other are the motor mounts that you need to make sure are structurally sound and don't have any big rust issues. Again, on this one, all of these mounts look fantastic and there's almost no rust on it. But particularly if it's been sitting without an engine for a long time, I've seen these really pitted and lots of structural integrity issues, or in some cases, so much rust that some of these are just starting to break off completely. So make sure that you're checking for rust here. And then the other place where I see a lot of rust is this area here in the back of the frame. Typically, and you can see from the other side, that this is usually hidden by the rear fender. So make sure if it has a fender that you're taking a look at it. But I've seen this area get completely rusted out before, and this metal is so thin that it's difficult to try to re-weld any replacement plates in it. I've actually had a professional welder do it on a couple of bikes and it looked okay, but this is an important area to check out when you're looking for the overall rust issues. And actually another area is this plate down here. I didn't even notice. This one's actually perfect. So many of these have this area completely rusted out. It's pretty thin. I don't think it provides much structural integrity to the frame. And if this does have rust, it's not really a problem, but the fact that this one has no rust here is indicative that this frame has lived a pretty good life. And then here on the front forks, checking for ear straightness, although this metal is so thin that it's easy to bend correctly, making sure that you don't have so much rust that the structural integrity of these won't hold the headlight and speedo bucket. But I haven't seen too many problems on the KO bikes with the fork ears here. On each side there are these little standoffs that hold the side reflector. On the left side here you can see it's perfect. On the right side it is missing altogether, and there's also a big chunk of metal missing on it. Fortunately, this bike came with a couple of extra front forks. This one's actually in fantastic condition, and I have another one as well. The only problem with this one is that there's that slight bend in the fork ear. But again, as thin as this metal is, I should be able to bend this correctly before I have it coated and have it look great. Also, take a look at the threads at the bottom of the shock. I typically chase these with a die as well to make sure they're perfect before I rebuild them, but if they're really mangled, that could be a problem when you're trying to assemble the shock. On the rear swing arm, there's not too much to this. Again, make sure that it's straight. Make sure that the threads on the studs here look pretty good. Again, chase them with a die if they're not perfect. Something else that I've noticed on a lot of these, maybe half of them actually, if they had the buddy peg tends to break off and be rusted and effectively permanently attached in this hole. More so on the right side because it has a stud on the other side to hold the bracket that keeps the hub from spinning. The other side has a hole that goes all the way through. So for whatever reason, those seem less likely to have that rod stuck and rusted in there. But pay attention to that. Again, you can always drill this out and re-tap it. It's just a lot of work. For the bushing up here, while you can replace this, you'll need a press to get them in and out. On almost every one that I've done, it's been good enough that I haven't noticed any performance issues. Even though this is a 50-year-old piece of rubber, it seems to work fine in all the builds that I've done so far, and I've actually even left it in through the powder coat process, so it's held up and not melted in, I'm not sure, 400 plus degrees of heat. That's one of those your mileage may vary situations, but I've had good success with all of these and haven't found them to be a problem yet. The other thing I wanted to mention was a steering stop, and that's something that used to scare me, but it doesn't any longer. And if you have the most amateur of welding skills or know anybody that can weld at all, I wouldn't let it stop you from buying a frame that's otherwise in great condition. So this one you can see is missing the steering stop, and it's actually missing it pretty cleanly. There's just a little bit of grinding that needs to be done to put in a new one. There's a website, I think it's Mike's Mini Trail, that sell the steering stop for just about $25. And again, me being one of the most amateur welders, I'm able to cleanly put a few tack welds in to permanently seat that before the bike gets coated. So just because it's missing the steering stop, don't let that detract you. Unless the area behind where it goes is so badly eaten away with rust that you won't be able to get to clean metal to do a good weld, it should be fine. Although you can also use a missing steering stop as a talking point to talk down the price to a seller that may not know how easy it is to replace. And then briefly, this is the 1972 frame that I picked up. It's also in great condition. All of the areas where I'm very mindful of rust look great. This one also has the steering stop broken off about halfway, so I'll have to grind the rest of it off before I put a new steering stop on, but otherwise no major dents in the frame. All of the areas that typically get a lot of rust look very good on this frame. The only main issue on this one is the fact that at some point somebody put a little switch here. It doesn't actually move at this point, but so it looks like there's a hole here that I'll have to deal with. I may be able to just weld something, grind it down if I'm going to powder coat this one, but that seems to be the only main imperfection on this frame. Since it's a K1 and slightly less desirable, I may use it as a platform to do another crazy build like the CT190. But at this point, who knows? I still need to get the K3 CT70 finished before I start working on these bikes, and I'm not sure which project I'm going to tackle first, but excited to have these projects lined up. So thank you everybody for sticking around. Stay tuned as I put these bikes together over the next several months. I'm not sure if I'll be able to complete all three of these here in 2021, but I've got a lot of other work on the other projects in the garage that I want to be able to tackle and complete first. If you're in the market for one of these CT70 frames and you have any questions, please drop them in the comments below. If you haven't yet, please subscribe below. Stay tuned for more videos and keep on building.